هل أجداده عليه السلام كلهم مؤمنون? Or the grandparents of the Prophet. Okay, here's an interesting point. I'll mention a bit about Dan Gibson. I do follow Dan Gibson quite closely. I mean, I'm not up to date on everything that Dan Gibson has said, but I do follow him quite closely. To be fair, I look into what he said. I'm not just somebody that disregards something just because it goes against what I'm saying. A lot of Islam revisionists have argued that Mecca Muslims, they feel that Islam did exist, like the Prophet did exist. Most of them do accept that, like Patricia Crone and other people. They feel that Mecca could not have been as significant as Muslims claim. Later Muslims claim. And to be fair, I think they've got a point. That I don't think Mecca was a significant city at all, or even a popular town. I think this is something that is recreated innocently by later Muslims. Not because they were trying to do propaganda. I think this is what they assumed would have been the reality. But now research seems to show that Mecca was not really like that. The other thing is that a lot of these people felt that Mecca may have not been where Mecca is. So Patricia Crone and other people, I think Michael Cook and some others, they argued that Mecca may have been more in the northern kingdoms. So in the kingdom of Sham. Now some people then suggested Petra. Now although from what I've read of Patricia Crone, I don't think she conclusively said that that was the case. But I believe that she felt she wasn't convinced with it being Mecca, as in situated at Mecca. So she felt it was somewhere else, but she wasn't quite sure where. But she was open to kind of suggestions. That's what I've read from some of her, and I'm still going through a few of her kind of works and articles and stuff. Now, right, so Dan Gibson, however, Dan Gibson has done a lot of research, which I am in some ways grateful to, because we have to honor ilm, even if it comes out with things that we don't like. But at the end of the day, this comes back to the point which I've been saying, that what we lack in our tradition is a critical review. So, coming back to Dan Gibson's point, he's gone around and he's got a book, Qiblas in Early Islam, or Early Qiblas in Islam. Now, he measures, I think, is it 160 or something masjids around the world, their foundations and things like this. But what he tries to do, several of them he visits them himself, and some he can't, so he uses certain satellite footage. He does explain the exact method of which satellites he's used and how he's accessed that footage. He explains all of this. He's very transparent, to be fair, I think. I don't believe he's as innocent necessarily as some people feel that he's very innocent. I think, this tongue-in-cheek, he's definitely... he is doing a bit of the naughty. He is definitely, I feel that. But that said, I think it's all within bounds and limits. I don't think he's falsifying evidence, because to do that he would just get caught out and it would ruin everything. So he's measured the foundations of many masjids and found them. He's found, like, those masjids, the ancient foundations dating from the 1st century of Islam, seem to be pointing not towards Mecca but towards Petra. Now, he's got, in his book, he's got diagrams and the standard deviation. He's got, he's compared how many degrees are they off from Petra, how many degrees are they off from Mecca. Now, I think, is it the 60s odd or whatever it is, there's a certain majority that he focuses on. They seem to definitely be always more closely aligned to Petra than they are to Mecca. And there's some that are to Mecca and there's some that are completely off. So they're just pointing south. So North African masjids seem to be just pointing south. The Andalusi mosques, the Spanish mosques, seem to be just pointing south. which makes no sense at all. And then he comes up with a theory which I think is ridiculous. That theory is ridiculous. Well, they were just replicating how they pointed from Damascus. I thought that's just, come on. However, what do I feel about all this, these masjids pointing towards Petra? Is this is it just wrong? I think that he may be right, that these masjid foundations may have pointed towards Petra. Now, or as in more closer to Petra than to Mecca. Now, why is the question? Now, my theory, people, is that Petra, unbeknowingly, not innocently, if you like, not as a part of like a scheme or a plot, but Petra has, I feel, been an actor, if you like, an active agent in the formation of certain Islamic phenomena. Now, I feel that, I'll come to this point a bit more, I feel that began with, really, and was concretized by one of the great grandfathers of the Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His name was Qusai, and that wasn't his actual name. His actual name, I believe, was Zayd, but Qusay is what he's known by. Qusay, you see, in his lifetime, you see, when Qusay was a young man, when he was just a little boy. When he was a little boy, his father passed, he's the son of Kilab, his father passes away. Now, his mother remarries this man who is an Arab, he's from her tribe, I believe they were Khuzā'. I believe they may have been Quda'i actually, but he's from her tribe, he marries her, but he lives in Sham. Now Qusay has an elder brother, I believe his name is Zuhra, but because he's like a young man, so the stepfather, the new father, he leaves him, he's not really bothered, but because this is an infant, he takes Qusay and his wife, Qusay's mum, up to Sham. Now he takes them home to this place called Wadi al-Qura, the Valley of Settlements. Now Petra, I believe that was Petra, because when you look at it, it states that Wadi al-Qura had the tribes, certain tribes settled there, like the tribes of Bani Udhra. Now, Bani Udhra were settled around northern Arabia, but also around Petra. Petra also had the name Qura. You see, the mother of settlements. Wadi was between valleys, Wadi al-Qura. Most Muslim historians, when they write about Wadi al-Qura, they say that that Qusay's stepfather, his name was Rabi', by the way, that Rabi' lived in Wadi al-Qura. We're not quite sure where that is. We think it's up there by Madain Saleh, or some people say it's over here. And so they don't seem to know where it is, because Petra, after, like maybe within a century or so after the Prophet, or within 2 centuries, definitely disappears. So people forget about Petra and only rediscover it in really the 18th, 19th century. So now, okay, so let's get to that story. So Qusay seems to be brought up there. Qusay means a stranger. Okay, the term Qasi comes from the word Qasi, Qaf Sad Ya. And the people of that region, although his stepfather was really good with him, but the people of that region had a disregard for him. They saw him as a foreigner. And they would call him Qasi, and they wouldn't call him Qasi, they would call him Qusay, which is a diminutive form. So it's like disparaging, more disrespectful. So they used to call him Qusay, Qusay. So this Qusay got like a little stranger. This stuck with him. So this became his name. Now Qusay always had this identitarian issue going on, like an identity crisis, because the people around him, Bani Udhra, and these people would never accept him. So he told his mom, this is transmitted, he complained that, oh, they keep calling, every time I say something, they say, oh, who are you? You're a foreigner, you know, you're not from us, you're not. So she says to him that, don't you worry about them. the son of Kilab. Kilab was from a much more noble tribe, the tribe of Quraysh. Now, whether Quraysh were that noble or not in the eyes of other Arabs, the important thing is they definitely were noble now in Qusay's eyes. So Qusay has this longing for this sense of identity and belonging. He wants to, so as he becomes a grown man, he leaves Sham and returns to Mecca. When he returns to Mecca, they say, you know, he was very handsome, he was charming, he was a strong man. They say he was a warrior, he was a very good fighter, and he charms his way, or he's seen as attractive. He marries the daughter of the high priest in Mecca, who's from this tribe called Qusai. When the high priest who holds the keys to the Kaaba dies, the daughter inherits it, and he's the husband, so he gets it. So he becomes the owner of the keys. He then expels Qusai, this tribe, from Mecca. This leads to like a mini civil war. So what he does is he makes a cry for all Quraysh people, close or far Quraysh, wherever you are, to come to Mecca and to join in this fight. He also calls his Shami cousins, you know, like his step siblings and his cousins, those that from which I believe would have been in Petra. He calls them. Now they come from Sham and they join in the fight, and eventually he wins. I mean, there is a kind of like an arbitration that takes place, but he kind of gets the upper hand. After that, he's in control of Mecca. He refashions how Mecca is established. He actually calls for a migration of all Qurayshis, because they never used to live in Mecca, wherever they are scattered, to come back to Mecca, and he will offer them allotments and settlements. So he says, if you're close to Quraysh, you can live within the Mecca thing. If not, you can live in the valley outskirts. He will give you land. So he actually calls, so there's this mass migration of Qurayshis that move towards Mecca and settle. He rebuilds the Kaaba and changes some of the design. Now he also builds houses as settlements close to the Kaaba, then a layer out, encircling the Kaaba, then encircling the Kaaba. He gives these to certain notary people of Quraysh. He's also known for several kind of battles defending Quraysh against many tribes. He was the most powerful leader that Quraysh ever had before Islam. Obviously, the Prophet is the most powerful leader that Quraysh ever had. That's with Islam. But pre-Islam, Qusay is the ultimate. This, I feel, is the reason that, because maybe some of the changes he made, he also dug up a lot of the wells and kind of set up Mecca as a much more powerful kind of place. This is, I feel, that the influences he brought may have been from where he was brought up. So maybe the way he fashioned the houses around the Kaaba, the settlements, the encirclement, this may have been influenced by his upbringing in Petra. This may be the reason why many historians in our books have referred to Mecca, the Kaaba, as Kaaba Shamia. You see, in our own books, I believe it may be in Bukhari as well, they refer to the Kaaba as the Kaaba Shamia, the Kaaba from Sham. This led some people to believe maybe the Kaaba was in Sham. But I believe that this was because it was the Shamized Kaaba. That the people, because of the influence in fashioning it, was so Shami, it was referred to as the Shami Kaaba. Sham is the Middle Eastern region, like Damascus and Petra and these places, Jordan and so on. So, okay, so that's, now with that understanding, let's go back to the Dan Gibson thing. Now, I feel that, you see, we have to understand that historic civilizations, and I mean thousands of years ago, I feel that they did have much more knowledge of the globe than people several centuries ago. So I do feel that they were maybe certain advanced civilizations that were destroyed. I do kind of buy into what certain people like people today. I've gone through some of these things actually today. Let me just check. Right, okay, it's not here. But people like Graham Hancock and other people, what they've argued that the Younger Dryas incident most likely demolished these ancient civilizations that were quite advanced. I do find that quite convincing and compelling, especially with the temple archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe, which archaeologically are dated to 11,500 years ago. It's impossible that hunter-gatherers just put their spears down and built massive kind of establishments all of a sudden. That just doesn't make any sense. So we know, this is what I feel that we definitely know from evidence, like even taking a look at maps that Ptolemy, maps that other people had, maps that the Reis Piri map, the Ottoman cartographer, the person who drew maps, and he says I drew this from over 100 archaic sources. Now on his map, which is from the 15th century, I believe, there's Antarctica. Now Antarctica is not discovered till the 1800s by the Russians, but he draws it accurately. And he also even drew the certain rivers which were covered by ice since the Younger Dryas. So, not to mention other landmass that's been underwater on other maps, yet visible on these maps. It's been underwater since the Younger Dryas, since 11,000 years ago. So, I feel that people knew how to navigate, and then maybe certain civilizations, it got lost to them, and then humans rediscovered it, in much more recent history. So, we see these ancient civilizations like the pyramids, and Petra is one of the ancient civilizations, the Aztec kind of civilizations, the Mayans, the Peruvian kind of monoliths that we have, megaliths, all these things, they seem to be aligned with constellations. Now, I feel that, you see, similarly, Petra would have been aligned with constellations. Now, I don't believe the Nabateans built Petra. Neither do I believe the pharaohs built the pyramids from scratch. I feel that they built upon previous structures, because it seems that they kind of inherited certain sites and built upon them, just as the people in the Amazon built on the kind of Olmecs and all this, the prior civilization stuff. They didn't come up with it. So I feel Petra was similar, and it is aligned to constellations. So it may have been that because the empire had a mercantile people that of trade that were going around, that they traveled to China, they traveled to India, they went to different places because they were trade specialists, right? Now, it may have been that they had set up certain devotion sites, certain temples, in line with the constellation that Petra is aligned to. So therefore they had these devotion sites already set up to that constellation. So it would be pointing towards Petra. It would kind of be aligned in that way. This is what I am currently understanding. I'm reading up a lot of things, and this is what I feel may have happened at this stage. I mean, I may review this theory in time to come, but if I find more information, and I feel that because the Nabateans were also Arabs, they were Arabs, pre-Islamic Shami Arabs, that when Muslims reached those places, the Nabatean Empire had kind of long dissolved and dissipated. So because they were Arabs and these people were prior Arabs, most likely they just inherited their sites and took them over. And because they were already aligned to Petra, which was Sham, and all companions and Tabi'in knew where Sham was, it was right just above the Hijaz, which is where Mecca is. So they may have just thought, yeah, that's good enough. Sham, let's just point it from here. Because one of the questions was, how did Muslims know which way Qibla was? Because the compass did not exist. So you have to understand that, especially from China, how did they know which way the Qibla was? I feel that they inherited the sites from the Nabateans. And so what's happened is the early foundations were maybe pointing towards Petra. But so people like Dan Gibson may be right, but for the wrong reasons. It's not because Petra was Mecca, but I feel it may have been because these devotion sites were close enough, and they may have been set up centuries before based on the knowledge of the constellations that Petra is aligned to. So that's my kind of current theory. So I feel that to be honest, I've not really come across anybody providing any meaningful answer to what Dan Gibson has said. And I feel that this actually is, I feel it's the truth, and I feel it's actually like, wow, everything then starts to fall into place. Like you start to see that, that makes actually a lot of sense. And if, you see, it makes sense, because one of the questions is, why did they used to call Mecca al-Qura when it's not really, it was only a small town? It would make sense if Qusay had called it al-Qura, because Qusay came from Petra, which was called al-Qura, so the mother of settlements. And now that this was his new kingdom, he was set to establish it, that this is now the mother of settlements. So it just seems to all fall into place. I don't know, Allahu A'lam. I'm still looking for it. So yes, I do, in short, I do feel that a lot of these people are right, but for the wrong reasons. So I feel that Dan Gibson is kind of right, maybe. Just as Patricia Crone, I feel she's right. I feel these people are right, but for the wrong reasons, that's all. So, yeah, people, I think with that,